Welcome everyone to the 101st annual meeting of the American Catholic Historical Association and the first meeting on Zoom. This is a different environment for us, but I think everyone seems to be flexible and rolling with the punches of this strange year. If there is any problem with hearing us or communicating at certain times during the meeting, we'll have others jump in, including, perhaps most importantly, our prize winners. And if you're having trouble accessing audio or video, just write that in the chat, and Andy Metzger, our web administrator, or myself will try to monitor that. I want to begin by thanking everyone for all this work that we've all done over the last year to keep the association running. So thank you all very much. I also thought before we call this meeting to order that we'd think about those who have left us during this last year, ACHA members who have passed away. And we have several obituaries that appear in the Catholic Historical Review that identify some of these individuals. And normally at the Mass, we recognize members who have left in the last year. We were not able to do that this year. So I thought just for 30 seconds, we'd pause to remember those in our 100-year-old association who have left us in 2020. And now we'll call this meeting, General Membership Business Meeting, to order at 6:01 p.m. on February 10th. I'm going to overview the agenda just so everyone knows where this fits in. And I'm going to share my screen with the business meeting agenda right now. So in a second, we'll approve the minutes. I'll share the minutes on the screen. They're very simple minutes from last year's business meeting. Andy is right now opening a page on our website that will list and become a repository for all of our minutes, financial reports, and other items of importance for the our association. After that, Tony Smith, our program committee chair, will give a review of the 2020 webinars that he and Tom Zheznik and Catherine Osborne and others have put together this year, as well as a preview for our next annual meeting in person in New Orleans in 2022. President Jim Carroll and Vice President Brenna Moore will announce our 2020 award winners. You might recall that several award winners were recognized in December. We have 2 additional awards to give tonight, and we hope to perhaps also hear from them if they were able to make it, although it was a little bit short notice to include them. In a second, we'll find out if they're here and we'll be able to greet them. There will be then followed by officer and staff reports, and this will include a very brief explanation of our budget for the coming year. And then the meeting will conclude with committee report. Well, it won't conclude. The next item will be committee reports. Most of these reports are put online, but we do have several committee chairs who are present who may wish to speak about the work of their committees this year. We have no old business and we have no new business, a business meeting. So we can pass through those items. And there are a few announcements, and it will conclude with hopefully a robust membership forum. Now, the membership forum will also work like other parts of the meeting. If you have a question or would like to make a comment and you want to be heard or seen, please drop that in the chat and we'll do our best to find you and allow you to speak or to be seen. If you prefer just to ask your question on the chat, we'll attempt to monitor that as well. So I, again, want to thank you all for being here and ask your patience as we navigate an annual meeting on Zoom. I am now going to pull up the minutes. Bear with me one second. We'll accept our minutes by acclamation, so we do not need a motion or a second or a vote. But if you wanted to take a minute to look at these minutes on the screen, and in a few seconds, we'll ask if there are any questions or corrections. and then we will accept the minutes by acclamation. Again, Andy, right as we speak, is opening a page on the website where this material and other documents are deposited. Are there any questions or corrections to the minutes? Okay, then we'll accept those minutes for the last year's meeting by acclamation. We'll now turn to Tony Smith, who has been laboring to deliver a kind of annual meeting experience to us, starting in webinars from December and continuing to this very evening at 7 p.m. We'll have our third of 4 webinars. So Tony, would you like to talk about that experience as well as what we can look forward to in New Orleans?
Yeah, right. Thank you, Charles. So I'll keep this brief, but so the program, the work of the program committee this past year has been largely taken up with figuring out, responding to the COVID pandemic and what that meant for the annual conference that was to be held in Seattle. We did review the submissions that were sent in. We extended the deadline into the end of June. At the time, we weren't quite clear what we were going to be doing, but we realized in the spring, as you know, people were preoccupied. So we extended the deadline. We had some very good submissions. We reviewed them. And because we were, the organization, the program committee made a recommendation and the executive committee approved it, that we would not meet in person, but instead have a series of webinars. The papers that were accepted would be, when we sent out notifications, we indicated that people's acceptance papers, panels, would be given preferential treatment in the review for the conference the following year. So deciding not to have an annual conference in Seattle, we devised a series of standalone single webinar events, 4 of them. As Charles said, I'm sure everybody knows the ones tonight. The first one was dedicated, focused on a panel that Brian Kleitz organized regarding public scholarship and Catholicism. And it was held in October. It was the first one to kick off these series of events that highlighted scholarship of members. They did a great job kind of like tailoring what had been intended to be questions about public scholarship and historians of Catholicism to matters about the upcoming election. It was held just a couple of weeks before the election in November. And so there was maybe some of you, maybe many of you were able to attend that. It was really a great session. The second one occurred 2 weeks ago on Catholic masculinities that Kate Dugan had organized, and that was a great success. We had a great turnout. I'll give numbers in a minute, but it was great turnout. It went beyond the allotted time, not because anybody was sloppy or spoke too long, but because the questions were so good and the discussion generated from what the panelists were all presented was really excellent. It was excellent. It was dynamite. Our third is tonight, and the fourth, I'll mention this in my introductory comments, in an hour or so, or less than an hour. But the fourth will be a month from today, which is Tuesday, March 10th, and it will be a webinar should be really great, on the recently opened Pius XII archives and Holocaust research. And so that's something really to look forward to. That'll be our fourth and concluding webinar for the season. Just to give you a little bit of the numbers in terms of these webinars. Our first webinar had 98 people who attended. And then the second one from 2 weeks ago on Catholic masculinities had 146 people who attended. So those are good numbers. Those are really good numbers, I think. I'm not sure what the final numbers will be tonight. Hopefully they'll be very good. I think that's in part, the numbers are, well, first of all, just the topics and the presentations, but also too, Mary Beth and Carlos have done a great job in spreading the word on social media. I tried to do my part. I know a lot of people did, and retweeting things. It was really very, very useful. And I think that helped a lot, and that generated at least a certain amount of interest in these events. Hopefully we can do that again for the next one. So that's about what we've been able to accomplish this year in light of some very difficult, trying circumstances. I want to give a big shout out to my co-members of the program committee, Tom Resnick and Catherine Osborne. They've been fantastic. We were able to work well, at least I think we were able to work well together and to really organize these events. In regards to next year, I'm sure everybody knows the call for paper went out a little while ago. The deadline is March 16th. So in a little more than a month for submissions. It'll be in New Orleans unless something dramatic or horrible happens. The expectation is we'll be meeting in person. I should also just let you know that already there has been, I've received interest in two proposed panels between the ACHA and the AHA, which is great, given the fact that, the turnaround time, the AHA is doing, I think, the 15th of February. So, so that's just something I think that speaks highly about the interest in the organization. Do try to promote this to everybody in your networks. It's in New Orleans. Like every year, we're trying to promote people to submit and propose papers, panels, roundtables on all facets of Catholic history. But given the fact that it's in New Orleans, really trying to encourage people to think about questions about race and Catholicism, Catholicism in Southern history, African-American Catholicism, religion and empire, Catholicism and empire, transnational Catholicism. I just ask people to kind of work their networks and encourage people, particularly people that you think are doing interesting stuff, but they may not know about the ACHA, like what, but to kind of really promote that. We've got a local arrangements committee in the works that I'm really excited about. Mike Pasquet, my colleague at Dayton, Cecilia Moore, and Justin Pochet have agreed to serve on the committee, so that they're all in one way or another have got multiple connections to New Orleans. So I'm hoping that we should have some great stuff on that level. So yeah, I'll stop there, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Tony, thank you. I know you have to leave to get ready for the webinar. We're going to talk about this more for people who have questions or comments in the open forum part of the meeting, and we'll be sure to get you any questions or comments anyone has. And at the open forum, for those of you who are coming in, I think it might be even better just to let everybody in at that point. So the screen might be filled with people. So we'll see how that goes later on. We want to maximize this limited time we have to hear from people. We'll now move, again, for those of you who are joining us, we're at the beginning of the meeting. Tony Smith just reviewed our webinars from 2020, 2021, and also introduced the 2022 meeting. Now we'll turn to President Jim Carroll and Vice President Brenna Moore, who will introduce our prize winners for this year. We announced the Gilday and Moraro prizes in December on the website. We announced the Shea and Ellis prizes just this week. And we have the winners of the Ellis and the Shea with us. And so after these citations are read, you are welcome to say a few words if you wish. So I'll turn to Jim to recognize the Ellis winner. Jim, could you please unmute?
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now. Sorry about that. The John Tracy Ellis Award. The ACHA's Committee on the Monsignor John Tracy Ellis Award, composed of John Farina Scher, James McCartan, and Robert Shafran, is pleased to recommend as a 2020 recipient Mitchell E. Oxford of the College of William and Mary for his proposal, The French Revolution and the Making of an American Catholicism, 1789 through 1870. The impact of the French Revolution on the American consciousness has long been noted by historians. The revolution served as a foil to the American experiment, both as a source of pride and caution. As the revolution turned more radical, scores of French emigres crowded to the New World well before many of their European counterparts. When it came to religion in America, Catholics were most influenced by the events in France. But strangely enough, in Mitchell Oxford's telling of the story, the way in which they thought of themselves historically undervalued the role that the revolution actually played in the new American Catholic experience. Our nation's first great Catholic historian, John Gilmary Shea, knew a great deal about the French-American experience. Writing extensively on the exploits of French missionaries in the Mississippi Valley, but even he, Mitchell thinks, undervalued the role the revolution had played. Oxford intends to correct that deficiency by studying the legacy of the revolution in questions of church and state, ecclesiastical authority, secular governance, and the role of providence in history. He endeavors to show how the French influence played a major role in harmonizing the authority, hierarchy, and tradition of the church with modern political ideals of liberty, equality, and progress. Oxford's work promises to fill a gap in American Catholic historiography and open to scholars a richer understanding of the French presence in Catholic America.
And Mitch, we'd love to hear from you. Congratulations.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Professor Carroll. It's really a great honor to receive an award named for John Tracy Ellis and given by an association whose support and camaraderie and collegiality has nurtured this dissertation from its very beginnings. So to Professor Farina and the committee, to President Carroll, to you, Charles, and to the many scholars who have come to know through this organization, many of whom I see on this chat right now, thank you so much. Your support bolsters me as I finish out this project, and I'm looking forward to seeing all of y'all in New Orleans next year. So thank you.
Thank you, Mitch, so much. Brenna.
Okay, thank you. Congratulations again, Mitch. I am pleased this evening to introduce the John Gilmary Shea Prize. This year's ACHA committee on the John Gilmary Shea Prize consisted of Una Cadigan, Massimo Fagioli, and A. Katie Sterling Harris. We're pleased to recommend this year's recipient as Elizabeth Foster's African Catholic, Decolonization and the Transformation of the Church, published in 2019 with Harvard University Press. African Catholic focuses on the importance of French and African Catholics in the political and cultural processes of decolonization in French Africa and their contribution to the reorientation of the church as a whole around Vatican II. Foster's work is the fruit of research based on sources found in several different archives in Rome, France, Senegal, Catholic missions and arms of the French state, Methodologically, the book lies at the intersection of political history, social history, intellectual history, church history, and it brings together Africa, Europe, religion, and empire together in innovative and very original ways. It truly opens up new perspectives on decolonization, Black internationalism, and the reform of the Catholic Church in the 1960s. Foster, who's already the author of the book Faith and Empire, Religion, Politics, and Colonial Rule in French Senegal. With this new book, she moves into the period of the 1960s with very important results. It complicates and enriches the narrative on a lot of historiographical issues that are central to many of our work on this Zoom tonight. The transition from a colonial Catholicism to post-colonial Catholicism, Africa's contribution to the reforms of Vatican II, the role that Africa played at the Vatican's expectations for a response of the Catholic Church against secularization and Islam. Foster's book also connects studies on 20th century Catholicism with the history of Black internationalism and negritude, helping us see, in fact, that there was a specific Catholic contribution to the rise of a new consciousness. On the issue of the contribution of Africa to the reforms of Vatican II, she contributes to the debate by showing that some assumptions about the intentions and conclusions of Vatican II are still based on the idea of a church dominated by Europe and North America. But this book shows conflicting impulses in French colonial Catholicism in Africa, the embrace of post-colonial aspirations of independence, both at the political and the ecclesial levels, and at the same time, the fear for the consequences of losing the support of France and French missionaries. The book is particularly important for church historians because it doesn't make assumptions about Catholicism as merely sort of an imagined community, but it explores it as a membership-based global institution with real, tangible, on-the-ground networks and circuits. African Catholic is an exemplary work in the history of decolonization and particularly the history of religion within it. Spanning multiple continents, archives, languages, cultures, religious traditions, it nonetheless weaves a complex, coherent narrative that enriches our understanding of the current state of the discipline and our imagination as to where the greatest potential for new and transformative research lies. Congratulations, Elizabeth. We're so happy for you.
Thank you, Brenna. It's so nice to see you, Brenna.
You too. I remember seeing you in Paris working on this so long ago, and you were like nursing a baby, but now look.
I survived.
Yeah. You survived and did such a great job.
I just joined because I was hurriedly shoving tortellini at the now 7-year-old baby. So I just want to thank you so much for that glowing assessment, and thank the society and the committee for this prize. It's such a great honor for me, and it's going to sound somewhat ridiculous because both of my books have featured Catholicism has been an important topic in both of my books, but I always still think of myself as kind of straying onto this ground from my training really as a French historian first and foremost, and as an Africanist. So it's especially pleasing to me that this group would see value in my work from your perspective as Catholic historians. So I'm so appreciative. And I also said when Una emailed me that this has been a tough year. This was so nice to get this email out of the blue. Really a great thing to get at the beginning of yet another COVID semester. So thank you all so much. I really, really appreciate it.
Very good.
Thank you, Elizabeth, so much. And what a great book. In keeping this concise, because we have to close about 20 minutes, quarter to 7. Would Jim just read the announcement for who won the Moraro Prize, and the same for Brenna for the Gilday Prize? The citations are on the website in December. I should also say, we're going to go over this again in New Orleans and celebrate everybody that won this year as well as next year in person.
Okay. All right. The Helen and Howard R. Moraro Prize. The American Historical Association, the American Catholic Historical Association, and the Society for Italian Historical Studies Committee on the Helen and Howard R. Moraro Prize. He is pleased to recommend as a 2020 recipient Juliana Chamides, A 20th Century Crusade, the Vatican's Battle to Remake Christian Europe. It was released by Harvard University Press in 2019.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
And
very
again,
good.
these two were on the website. The Ellis and the Shea are brand new being announced. So Brenda, on the Gilday.
Okay, yes, just briefly, the Peter Gilday Prize for 2020 for the best article published in the Catholic Historical Review, that is the author's first scholarly publication, is awarded this year to Daniel Thompson, a doctoral student at Yale University, for his article, Spaces of Dissent, Violence and the Cuban Catholic Resistance, 1959 to 1961. Congratulations, Daniel.
All right, President Carroll, officer report.
So this obviously, it really is amazing to me watching from my perch as president, just how well the ACHA has functioned and how they've been able to pivot, literally sometimes on the spot, to make changes. And what's really exciting for me is that we're moving ahead, despite the fact that a lot of people are, mired in the COVID changes in educational pedagogy, family concerns, illness, etc. And yet we are, going full speed ahead to plan a very vibrant and important in-person meeting in New Orleans. We're in the beginning stages of the planning for the spring meeting, which will tentatively be held at the University of Scranton. We're still working on details, but and Scranton just got a new president this morning, so they actually, it's not a friend of mine. He's a Jesuit, but in any case, so there are a lot of exciting things going on. Scholarship continues. I think we're going to have to rethink this whole interlude, if you want to call it the COVID interlude, because access to archives being open simply as is the case. And so I suspect there are some people out there who are struggling because of COVID. They can't get into these various archives because they're simply closed. So we have to help them along as well. My own research has been stymied for most of the time by COVID, as well as the Attorney General's orders, basically locking all archives in, at least in New York. All right. In other words, you can't get into those archives at all. But I think under the direction of Charles, Andy, I was going through the website today. It really is remarkable. We've moved at, I hate to use the term warp speed to get things done, but I certainly think that Charles and his whole team is worthy of commendation. So thank you, Charles, and I'll leave it at that. Okay.
Thanks, Jim. And so everyone knows the EC, the Executive Council, determined that because of the strangeness of this last year, the officers from the 2020 have continued into 2021. But soon we will have elections for 2022, including all the officer positions, except for president, because Vice President Brenna Moore will step in to carry on the good work of Jim Carroll. So Brenna.
Thank you so much, Jim. I'll just try to be brief. I have just two things I want to share with everybody tonight. One, I would love us all just to spend the next few weeks trying to think about New Orleans. We need to go big in New Orleans. If it happens, and I think it will, it will just feel so good to all be together again and to be doing in-person intellectual work. And so I think there's going to be so many reasons it will be meaningful to be together in New Orleans and very fun. But one, it really gives us a chance to think about what is valuable about in-person intellectual work. And let's think about those dead spaces in the weekend that we can really think about using those, not just the panels, but let's put ourselves out there. I feel like academics, myself included, can be awkward and we don't know, and you just show up and you forget even where you're going and you sort of assume someone else is in charge, but really we are the ACHA, and let's just put ourselves out there and do things like invite younger scholars to read their work or have coffee or just kind of fill those dead spaces at the conference with meaningful kind of relational intellectual work. I think we'll be just so relieved to make that happen. So I'd love to do that. And also, we do have about a month till the call for papers are due. And it would just be wonderful to see some panels that would continue to do the work that has been happening in the last couple of years of making a more inclusive and diverse ACHA. There has we all know, we've all been experiencing the reckoning with racial injustice and the entanglements between Catholicism and white supremacy. But it is true that so many people in the world are talking about the importance of a real reckoning with history and even Christian history. And so I think we have a real role to play in New Orleans of helping us as a guild kind of reflect intellectually about what we've all been through. So I urge us to kind of think creatively and even invite other people that I would just agree with what Tony said about really reaching out to people who maybe aren't typically part of our organization. And it can also be something very empowering for scholars who might not have quite the big audience yet to consider doing panels on new books or doing, putting the spotlight on people whose kind of work and who are emphasizing the voices that are helping to create a more inclusive and diverse ACHA. That can be a really wonderful thing. Even if you aren't on the panel, you can kind of create a panel and step aside. That can be kind of a fun thing to do. I mean, fun even, you're kind of happy to see cool intellectual work happen at the ACHA, but then not be on the hook yourself. So please email me, and I'm happy to chat more. I'm really excited. It's fun. I think anticipation is one of life's great pleasures, and we've been robbed of a lot of planning in COVID as plans fall apart, but I think can plan for New Orleans. And then I wanted just to end my remarks and turn and see if Stephanie wants to just say a little thing. I had been chatting with Stephanie about the possibility of trying to reach out to people who are really doing important work on Black Catholicism right now, like Shannon D. Williams, who was so central in getting the Cyprian Davis Prize going and is doing incredible work on Twitter. And it's so fits so much with our mission. So trying to think about how our organization might support work that is happening on the ground, really to create a more anti-racist way of doing the history of Catholicism. And Stephanie, as our membership, the head of our membership and our elections committee, just had some really interesting ideas. And as someone who works has a slightly different perspective on public history, than I do in working at Fordham. She just had some interesting things to say. So I'm just going to turn it to her for 2 minutes, and then we'll keep going down the agenda. So thanks.
Thank you, Brenna. Yeah, no, in this email conversation yesterday, some of you were copied on it. I'm a public historian. I'm not a university teacher. I'm a public historian. I work as the director of archives for the Archdiocese of Washington. And I consider myself at this point kind of on the front lines of this, because a large part of the knowledge gap of dealing with kind of looking at the church in sort of anti-racist terms is this knowledge of Catholic history and of Black Catholic history. And, one of the things I did just, to try and get this out there is something I can do as a historian is start to tell those stories. And I think it's something that we as historians need to look at and need to promote. I mean, it's something that even the bishop said was important in their recent pastoral letter on racism, that they particularly pointed out that we have to learn this history as Catholics. We have to understand the history of segregated churches. We have to understand the history of American slavery as it relates to the church. As I said in the email yesterday, you have no idea how many people tell me that only the Jesuits ever owned slaves, no other Catholics did. And it just makes no sense when you sit down and think about it. But the thing is that Georgetown has gotten all the press. They're the ones with the articles in the Washington Post and the articles in the New York Times talking about what they're doing with the looking at the history and dealing with reparations related to the 1838 slave sale. But in the Archdiocese of Washington, 3 of those Jesuit plantations where those enslaved persons lived are actually still functioning Catholic parishes. The plantation chapels were the only things that were left standing in many cases, and they became parish churches over time. And so we still have parishes on those plantations in those places. And so that's something that we're dealing with on the front lines, trying to just get people here in DC, many of whom are not from here, so they don't know that history, to kind of understand that history and understand the depth of it, and to understand the depth of the Black Catholic experience. And as Catholic historians, it's something that we also, no matter what period you teach, I mean, I'm not an African American specialist, I'm a 19th century social, cultural, economic historian, really. But it's something that we really need to look at and really need to promote, and really assist as many people as we can in understanding this, because part of basically becoming less racist is understanding where someone else is coming from. And we really need to understand where Black Catholics are coming from.
Thank you so much, Brenna and Stephanie. And I should just share that the Cyprian Davis Prize will be announced very soon. It's a joint project between the Cushwa Center and the ACHA. We now have Elizabeth Davis, one of our 2 graduate student reps, who gives a particular perspective as somebody who has won awards from the ACHA, who's a very creative contributor to the EC. Thought it was a good opportunity for Elizabeth to share with the group.
Thanks, Charles. I feel kind of like what I had planned has already been said today, to be honest. So when Mitchell accepted his prize, he talked a lot about the community he stepped into and the value of that community. One thing that as an e-board member that I've been so honored to be a part of is this community, that on the e-board, I always have a voice as the graduate student member, and now I'm a contingent faculty, so I'm still the graduate student member, but I'm kind of moving on with my career. And that voice is always respected, even though I probably talk way too much during committee meetings. But there's this level of mentorship within ACHA that you can't really find anywhere else. That I think all of us younger scholars have met people at ACHA conferences who have read our dissertations in progress, our books in progress, and who are always there, who are there not just academically, but to talk to over a cup of coffee, as Brenda suggested doing at New Orleans. And especially for emerging scholars like me, having that person to go to and say, help, I am going nuts, I am quarantined, I don't know what I'm doing right now, please give feedback, is so important at this time. I also want to echo what Jim said as well about the flexibility. This past year, the ACHA has been extremely flexible, but has always valued and has always promoted graduate students. So we brought on Carlos, who's our new graduate student assistant, to run our communications. We've also seen some of our prizes have shifted a little. So over the summer, the traditional travel grant became a writing grant for graduate students and contingent faculty. During various, I just got a notification that my connection's unstable, I apologize. During various committees recently, we've been talking about the budget, and there's always this push to make sure that there is graduate student funding. And so the ACHA continues to value community, continues to value mentorship, and continues to emphasize the work of emerging scholars, graduate students going into us newly minted PhDs. And so I just wanted to take a moment to reflect on that as the graduate student representative.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. My secretary treasurer report will be short. Andy tells me that the items are on the website now. If you go to the achahistory.org website and then the About menu, you can see the minutes, the agenda, the financial report, as well as additional documents that will come from committees. The first item regarding the secretary aspect of this job is to just announce our membership numbers. We currently have 394 members, which includes 190 regular members, 74 students, 23 emeritus, 43 full, 51 lifetime, and 13 library. And this is an initiative, the membership drive that you are learning more about there's a survey out that appeared in the last newsletter that came out earlier this week, is just one way that the membership committee is working hard to get us over 400 and then ideally more in the 500 plus range, which is a good goal for an association of our size. The second report, and I'll just show this briefly, I'm also recognizing that I inadvertently left Nelson Minnick off of our review here. So Nelson will go right after Carlos. Sorry, Nelson. But the financial report is online, but I wanted to just feature it here for 1 second. And we do have the ability to go to 655 if necessary, which looks like what we will be doing. The Executive Council earlier this year passed a budget for 2021. Again, you can look at this all in detail on the website, but this budget is a total of $95,000 for the year 2021. And this is a balanced budget when you consider, I'll scroll up here. I know this is a lot to take in, which is why it's on the website. When you consider the membership income that we've approximated for 2021, donation income, again, please check the recent newsletter for information about how we're doing a fundraising drive this year, conference income, and then a transfer of 3% from our investment portfolio to match the expenditures that we have budgeted for.
Okay.
So we hope to take in 95 and we hope to spend 95, maybe less, considering the active interest in finding some partnerships and co-sponsors for events at the annual meeting. Our investment portfolio at Raymond James stands as of yesterday at 1.74 million. And in communication with our investment manager from Raymond James just this morning, this reflects a 17.7% dollar gain during the year 2020. And since Raymond James has been managing this fund, which they took it over in May 2013, we've earned an annual compounded return of 9.76% for a dollar gain in this 8 years of $452,000. Now, out of that $452, we've withdrawn in the last 8 years $319 approximately $1,000. So that still leaves an advance on our original investment back in 2013 of $661,000. We have a checking account that it currently has $30,000. And I'm very excited to announce that an ongoing effort to start the Kauffman Prize, which really is only a month or so old, maybe 2 months old, has already reached $27,820 as of today. And in order to fund and inaugurate this prize, our prize policy requires that we reach 50,000. And I think that this committee would say that we're well on our way to that. That's the extent of my Secretary Treasurer's report. It's also, though, my distinct honor to welcome a new member of the ACHA team, that is Carlos Ruiz Martinez. Now, if you looked at that newsletter, we all should clap for Carlos. That newsletter, which we're calling a reimagined ACHA newsletter, is really the work of Carlos, along with Andy Metzger doing the great design effort. Carlos is at Iowa. He has an exciting dissertation project and a lot of enthusiasm for our association. And I want to just turn it over to Carlos to say hello.
Hey, Charles. Yeah, I'll be brief. I'm a PhD student at the Department of Religious Studies at the University of Iowa. And just to go over my role, I run social media for the ACHA, helped rethink the ACHA newsletter a bit. And I'm currently thinking about content creation. What are some of the things that we can do to sort of showcase the work that the ACHA is doing? Brenna mentioned earlier, putting yourself out there as a scholar. And sort of my vision is to ask, what are some of the things that we can do through social media to put the work being done by ACHA members out there? One example is the ACHA Scholar Spotlight that was published earlier this week, last week, featuring Sergio Gonzalez, a assistant professor of Latinx studies at Marquette. We will be doing that regularly. Earlier this week, we published Katie Holscher's virtual pilgrimage to El Santuario de Chimayo, and that will also be a monthly series, right? So what are some of my vision is what are some of the things that I can do to showcase the work of ACHA members and show that this is an active organization that is producing intellectually stimulating work.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carlos. Thank you very, very much. And thank you to the Executive Council for authorizing this new position. And Carlos joins Andy and Sam Highlands, our assistant at Mount St. Mary's, and myself as kind of the ACHA staff. We turn now to Nelson Minnick, the editor of the Catholic Historical Review.
Thank you, Charles, for this opportunity to give you a report on last year's volume 106. It consisted of 721 pages, which you probably realize that's about 200 pages less than we normally produce. What I did have control over were the articles. I did not have much control over book reviews, and that was where we had the problem, big problem. We also had another problem, a minor problem, but for the authors, it was probably not very happy. We had a problem called a quark. I don't know what this is all about, but it deleted some text on the article, for example, the presidential address of Kathleen Holscher. It did the same thing to Herrera's article and to Asuncion Lavrin's. So I don't understand how it happened, but I'm promised by Boca type that it won't happen again. So my apologies to those people whose articles and book reviews were botched by that quark, but it won't happen again. So my apologies. We produced 19 articles plus a presidential address by Kathleen Holscher on the Osage Indians and their fight to maintain Catholic schools on their reservations. We also did a Journeys in Church History by Leslie Tentler on becoming an historian of American Catholicism. The distribution of the articles was pretty good, but we had the same old problem, namely we don't get ancient church history articles. It's a problem we don't know how to solve. We keep trying to work on it, but that's our big lacuna. The contributions of those 19, 11 were from American historians, but 8 were from other people from around the world, representing 5 of the 7 continents. We didn't get anything from Antarctica, we didn't get anything from Australia, but we got it from the rest. So it really is an international journal, which I hope you're proud of. We did have 21 book reviews, but as you probably suspect, when the COVID came, the university closed down, basically. The library closed. The student helpers that we had were sent home. So it became a nightmare. But we're hoping we're going to get back on track. But that was our problem. For this coming last year, we got 32 submissions. Once again, a third of them came from abroad, but this time only 4 continents, not 5. The special prize, which we had for the best article that appeared in the journal, was given to, believe it or not, a doctoral student, Killian Harrer. And it's a fascinating study on a mitred abbess of a monastery in France who took on Cardinal Archbishop, who wanted to take away her temporal and spiritual jurisdiction. And you don't take on a mitred abbess. She won, by the way, but it's a fascinating story of this abbess wasn't going to yield to the Cardinal Archbishop, and she wins in the end. So women had jurisdiction, spiritual jurisdiction in the Catholic Church. Interesting topic, huh? So one other element I want to mention is that we're trying to update the journal, and we're trying to add a new section to it on reviewing digital humanities websites related to church history. So this is a new area which we're exploring. So we hope we can make some progress on that. So basically that's my report, unless you have any questions.
So Nelson's report
you.
as well, thank you, Nelson, so much. The Nelson's report and all the committee reports, as well as other items from this meeting, appear online or will be appearing online. I want to just leave the committee reports as online reports unless a committee member wants to jump in here during membership forum, but everybody now has been welcomed. We have a little less than 7 minutes or 8 minutes maybe before the webinar starts, but this would be an opportunity for members to ask questions or make comments. We just need one person to start us off with a question or comment. Angie Dries, do you want to say something? It's good to see you. You have to unmute. You have to unmute, Angie. I'm putting you on the spot. So I think you're still muted, Angie. I'm sorry. She's still muted.
She's still.
Angie, you are still muted. We can't hear you.
Okay, I'm very happy to have heard the young voices in the organization. That was very important to me when I was on the executive council, that we had people feeling they were entering a community of scholars. So thank you for all of you in our gathering here who feel that way as a younger scholar. And thank you to all the people in our organization who help make that atmosphere happen.
Thank you, Angie. And there are too many on the screen for me to see if anyone's raising their hand or anything. So if you just wanted to unmute yourself and ask a question or make a comment, we have a few more minutes for that.
Is it true Jim Carroll refused to leave office?
Where do we go with that, Jeff? It's been great. There's a team effort in ACHA. It's just very clear now that we're working as a team, and it's a lot of fun.
I just want to ask a question. Hi, it's Chris Polito. And that is whether the program committee would be interested in doing more kind of professional development, picking up on some themes that people have been talking about this evening, of getting the word out. And so in the past, it's been a little difficult to try to get a round table on, let's say, how do you write an op-ed? Or how do you work with newspaper reporters so that we can do that kind of public-facing scholarship? So I'm wondering, asking the program committee specifically, whether they would be open to a proposal like that.
Catherine Osborne is on the program committee, as is Tom Zheznik. They're both on this call. Catherine says the program committee is very open to this kind of thing. Please submit a panel. Tom or Catherine, do you want to say anything to Chris's question? Maybe not beyond that. I thought Tom was, there's Tom. Go ahead, Tom.
Other than that, just to emphasize what Catherine said, that we're happy to entertain those sorts of submissions. So please do send them in.
Okay.
Charles,
Please, Kate.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but this is also something the membership committee is thinking about, is like ways that we can be offering things that make ACHA more attractive to membership. So in that SurveyMonkey survey that I know you're all just jumping to fill out, you know, ideas like that we would love to collect those there. If there's other things like that, that would be good.
Yeah, and I'll just jump in verbally quickly to say that if you were thinking especially about, journalists are great on panels because they are very concise and very good at keeping the conversation going. So if you're organizing a panel, please do consider a mix of journalists and scholars, or practitioners, especially if they happen to live in and around New Orleans or otherwise locally. Yeah, please do consider having a sort of diversity of people on the panels you submit. But we're open to everything. Very, very happy to hear whatever people want to put forward.
And Catherine, the deadline again is March.
I believe it's March 15th. And I would say,
16th.
I think
16th.
16th.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't know you were still
hi,
here,
Tony.
Tony.
Okay.
I didn't know you
I
were
would,
still here.
I would just say that in the past we have extended the deadline. It's possible we may extend it again. However, we are expecting a lot of submissions this year because we're inviting everybody who submitted to Seattle to resubmit. So I would say that this would be a great year to be, on time about getting your submissions in.
And Catherine, do you know if this year we have more slots? I feel like I heard that, or no, how we invited the old panels to come. Do we get more slots or is it still the same?
So I think Tony has kind of the definitive, Tony's been working.
Oh, Tony's here. I thought you left.
Yeah.
I came back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's very much something we're looking into. There's nothing definitive, but given the fact how we kind of want to go big in New Orleans, that I think it would be great to at least anticipate the need to kind of have more slots. Now, that's going to a little bit depend, I think, on things like working, I guess, with the AHA and the hotel to be able to get another room. But I'm hoping that, if we've got these great panels, which anticipating that we can do that. Yes.
To my knowledge, the AHA will not constrain us too much. So I think if you build it, we will have enough. I think that's the case. Now, I want to give the webinar team enough time to regroup here. We start in 5 minutes with a great webinar. I want to also, though, make sure that we thank Stephanie Jacoby, Elections Board, Mary Beth Fraser Connolly, Electronic Media Committee. Mary Beth put a chat item that thanks her whole committee. There's also going to be her report on the website. Thank you, Mary Beth. Pete Chaika on the membership committee. I'm naming the chairs, but each of these have a very strong committee. And Tony Smith on program committee, and then a bunch of us work on the finance committee. So thank you all very much. Andy Metzger also wants me to remind everyone, just stay on the line. Do not hang up if you don't wish. The webinar starts in 4 minutes. He's going to put on some nice music to be an interlude here, and others will be joining us for a very exciting webinar about teaching and the way that we're kind of stretched sometimes to teach beyond our discipline. Lots of exciting work on this. Thank you all for this special annual meeting via Zoom. We'll conclude and adjourn now at 6:57 p.m. and look forward to seeing you soon, and especially in New Orleans. So thank you all very, very much.
Thanks, folks.